For 52-year-old Dawn Walker, October 27, 2021 was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. It was her wedding day. The mother of 3 and grandmother of 3 believed she had found love again with a man named Thomas Nutt. After years of life's ups and downs, she was ready for a fresh start, ready for companionship, and ready to believe that happiness still waited for her. That morning, friends and family gathered as Dawn prepared to walk into a new chapter. The ceremony took place at a registry office in Halifax. It was simple, modest, and intimate. Afterward, loved ones made their way to the Prince Albert pub in Brighouse for the reception. Glasses were raised. People smiled. The newlyweds were congratulated. On the surface, everything appeared normal. But those closest to Dawn noticed something strange. She didn't look like a joyful bride. Her hands trembled throughout the day. Her smile looked forced. Her eyes carried a tension that didn't match the celebration around her. Some assumed it was just nerves. Weddings are emotional occasions. Even second marriages can bring anxiety. But for Dawn, this felt different. Several people would later remember the way she seemed distant, almost fearful. By 10:30 p.m., the celebration had wound down. Dawn and her new husband called a taxi and left the reception together. The journey back to their home on Shirley Grove in Lightcliffe was quiet. The taxi driver later recalled that there was no laughter, no excitement, no conversation you would expect from newlyweds heading home after their wedding. Instead, the car felt tense, silent, heavy. At 10:36 p.m., CCTV captured Dawn stepping out of the taxi and walking toward her front door. That was the last time she was ever seen alive. To understand how a wedding day could turn into a murder scene within hours, you have to understand who Dawn Walker was and the life she had been living in the years leading up to that night. Dawn was described by almost everyone who knew her as kind, generous, and warm. She had the type of personality that made people feel comfortable immediately. She was talkative, cheerful, and thoughtful. The kind of person who remembered birthdays, called to check in on friends, and always tried to help others even when she had very little herself. Her daughter would later recall a small but telling story. One day, Dawn noticed a disabled man in a store who didn't have enough money to pay for his groceries. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and paid the rest of his bill. She didn't know him. She didn't expect anything in return. That was simply who she was. Dawn had 3 daughters and 3 grandsons who adored her. Family meant everything to her. She stayed connected to everyone, always calling, always checking in. She never wanted anyone to feel alone. She lived in a 3-bedroom bungalow on Shirley Grove, in a neighborhood filled with young families. When she first moved in, she quickly introduced herself to neighbors. Within weeks, she hosted a barbecue so everyone could meet and feel welcome. It was typical Dawn behavior, reaching out, building connections, creating community. She also sold Avon and Tupperware products, which gave her an excuse to chat with people and form friendships. For Dawn, conversation came easily. She enjoyed being around others. She liked feeling useful and connected. But behind her bright personality, she carried struggles that many people never fully saw. Dawn suffered from bipolar disorder and depression. These conditions affected her daily life and sometimes left her vulnerable. She had moments of deep sadness and moments of emotional instability. Still, she tried her best to manage them and maintain a positive outlook. She remained generous and caring despite her internal battles. Unfortunately, those struggles would later be used against her by the man who was supposed to love and protect her. Dawn met Thomas Nutt sometime around late 2018 or early 2019. At first, the relationship seemed normal, perhaps even hopeful. Dawn wanted companionship. She wanted someone who would love her and stand beside her. But very quickly, things began to change. Thomas moved in with her almost immediately. The relationship progressed at a speed that made some family members uncomfortable. Within a short time, his presence began to dominate the household. For Dawn's daughters, this marked the beginning of a long and frightening period. Thomas Nutt had a history, a long and violent one. Years before meeting Dawn, he had already built a record filled with aggression and criminal behavior. As a teenager, he had been convicted of grievous bodily harm. In the 1990s, he served lengthy prison sentences for robberies. In the early 2000s, he went to jail again after deliberately driving into another woman's car during a road rage incident. But perhaps the clearest warning signs came from his previous long-term relationship with a woman named Kimberly. They had met at a traveling fairground and moved in together quickly. At first, according to Kimberly, he was charming and kind. For the first few years, there was no violence. But after the birth of their first child, everything changed. Just 2 days after she gave birth, they argued over what to name the baby. What should have been a simple disagreement turned into something terrifying. He punched her repeatedly in the face. He took her phone. He refused to let her leave the house. That incident marked the beginning of years of abuse. Over time, the violence escalated. He attacked her again in 2009. Then in 2015, he carried out a brutal assault that nearly killed her. He grabbed her by the throat while she lay in bed, strangling her and punching her repeatedly. He dragged her across the room, restricting her breathing until she thought she was going to die. Kimberly would later describe him as a man with a deep hatred for women. She said he could be loving and calm one moment, then suddenly explode into uncontrollable rage the next. When he became angry, nothing could calm him. Nothing could reach him. After that final assault, he was convicted and a restraining order was issued. But even then, his attempts to control and intimidate didn't stop. He found ways to send disturbing messages and reminders of his presence, keeping fear alive even from a distance. All of this history existed before he met Dawn. But Dawn either didn't know the full extent of it or believed that love could change him. As the relationship developed, controlling behavior began to surface. Dawn's daughter, Kira Lee, would later testify that arguments between Thomas and Dawn were frequent. The household felt tense, uncomfortable. At one point, Kira Lee was effectively pushed out of the family home because Thomas didn't want her there. He seemed to have a particular hostility toward women and showed more respect to men than to women. By 2020, the situation had become openly abusive. Neighbors noticed injuries. They saw Dawn with a black eye, cuts on her face, swollen lips. It was clear she had been beaten. Some asked questions. Some worried silently. But like many victims of domestic abuse, Dawn often minimized what was happening. In August 2020, Thomas assaulted her so severely that she told others he had nearly killed her. He was arrested and charged. But later, Dawn withdrew her statement. Without her cooperation, the case collapsed. The cycle had begun. Violence, arrest, withdrawal, release. It happened again in August 2021. A neighbor heard distressing sounds coming from the house early one morning and went to check. Dawn appeared at the top of the stairs, clearly terrified. When Thomas claimed she was having an asthma attack, Dawn looked directly at the neighbor and said, "Don't believe him. He's trying to kill me." She later said her ribs were broken. Once again, he was arrested. Once again, Dawn retracted her statement. Each time charges were dropped, his confidence grew. He learned that he could hurt her and avoid serious consequences. And each time, Dawn became more trapped. At one point, Dawn reached out to Kimberly, Thomas's former partner, after discovering she had a restraining order against him. Kimberly told her everything. She showed her photos of injuries. She warned her directly. "He will end up killing you one day. Get out." Dawn admitted that he scared her. But she also said she loved him. Like many victims in abusive relationships, she felt emotionally bound to the very person harming her. Over time, Thomas isolated her further. He blocked Kimberly from Dawn's social media. He cut off outside support. He tightened his control. In the week leading up to the wedding, Dawn expressed fear to multiple people. She told a neighbor she felt like something bad was going to happen. She asked if it was just nerves or if she should run. To her daughter, she said she had a terrible feeling. It was as if she sensed what was coming. Yet the wedding went ahead. Friends and family gathered. Smiles were exchanged. Photos were taken. But behind the scenes, fear lingered. After returning home that night, sometime between 11 p.m. and midnight, Dawn Walker was murdered by the man she had just married. A neighbor later reported hearing heavy thumps coming from next door for nearly an hour. There were no screams, no cries for help, just the sounds of a violent struggle that appeared one-sided. The post-mortem examination would later reveal the extent of the brutality. Dawn had been severely beaten and then strangled. The attack was sustained and deliberate. She fought back, but she was smaller and older. She had no chance against him. She died in her own bedroom just hours after saying her wedding vows. After killing her, Thomas Nutt didn't call for help. He didn't show remorse. Instead, he began planning a cover-up. He hid her body inside a cupboard. In the early hours of the morning, he sent messages from her phone to her daughter to create the illusion that she was alive. He washed his clothes. Later that day, CCTV captured him hanging laundry in the garden. He then left for what he described as a honeymoon trip, alone. While he traveled, Dawn's body remained hidden inside the house. When he returned, he decorated the home for Halloween. He reported her missing. He told police she had mental health issues. He portrayed himself as a concerned husband. He even took her daughter out searching for her, all while knowing she was dead inside the home. Eventually, pressure grew for police to search the house. Realizing he couldn't delay much longer, he moved her body into a suitcase and disposed of it in nearby undergrowth. CCTV captured him dragging the suitcase through the garden just minutes before officers were due to arrive. Soon after, Dawn's body was discovered. The evidence against him was overwhelming. CCTV footage, false messages, witness testimony, and his long history of violence. At trial, he admitted manslaughter but denied murder, claiming he lost control after an argument. Prosecutors argued it was the culmination of years of escalating abuse. The jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict for murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 21 years. For Dawn's family, the verdict brought some justice, but not closure. They lost a mother, a grandmother, a friend. A woman remembered for her kindness and generosity. A woman who gave to others even when she had little. Her death highlighted the devastating reality of domestic violence, how warning signs can be missed, how victims can become trapped, and how systems sometimes fail to protect those most at risk. Dawn Walker's story is not just about how she died. It is about how she lived, with kindness, warmth, and love for those around her. And it is a reminder of the dangers that can exist behind closed doors, even on what should be the happiest day of someone's life.